Hello everyone. On today's video, we're going to be putting everything we've been learning with advanced navigation together into kind of one piece. What we're going to be doing is flying a cross-country flight here in our handy-dandy little Cessna 172, and we're going to be going all the way in a pretty good distance using just conventional fixes and basically heading corrections along our flight. So popping over to a little Navmap real quickly here. You can see we're sitting here in Chatton Municipal Airport. This is right on the tip of Cape Cod, I should say. The reason we picked this particular location is because it gives us a little bit of over-water action as well as some action going this way as well. Now, to make things interesting for us, of course, we're using real weather, and unfortunately, the weather is absolutely garbo on this particular side of things. So it's going to make it kind of interesting for us as we kind of travel along this route. Hopefully, we won't run into any nasty icing or anything like that. So first things first, let's go ahead and get our radios all nice and set up here. I noticed that there is our handy-dandy VOR station over on this side of things, but we're going to need at least 2 VOR stations to be able to reliably get a fix. So our other option, of course, is how we could take the one up here at Boston, which is actually a very strong one. It's going to work well. Or, of course, we could take the one down here, which is actually a VOR-TAC. We could also, if we wanted to, take the one off Martha's Vineyard, which is actually what I'm going to end up doing. So the first thing I want to do is get my frequencies set up correctly. So the first one I have is a 114.50. So let's go ahead and climb inside of aircraft. What is it? No, we don't want any of that. There we go. Nice and boring. Boop. Okay, good. So let's go ahead and come up to here, pop the button, 114.50. Boop, 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 boop. That's the sound it should be making, but it doesn't actually make that sound. All right, so that's going to go ahead and set this one up. Obviously, we can't detect it just yet because of where we're positioned right now. Our next one, of course, so we'll go ahead and grab the one that's up on the tip here. That's at Provincetown Municipal. I believe the frequency for that, I'm sorry, way over here, IFV, or LFV, I should say, 114.70. So 114.70. Swap that, we might get a little luckier. Hey, look at that. I'm going to set this to the from position because that makes it much simpler to take a fix. Let's go ahead and do a quick idiot check here. So we can see that from this station, it's a 191. So if we were to go up to the station, right click, go ahead and create ourselves a measured distance, and we want 191. I expect it to be pretty darn close to where we presently are. And if I zoom in a little bit here, I can see that, yeah, it's actually pretty darn close to where we are. It's off by a little bit here, but keep in mind, it's only as accurate as that tool can be at that distance. So the idiot check checks out, if that makes any sense. All right, so our first fix for this little journey today is going to be actually taking place right here at the end of the runway. So let's go pop over to the flight simulator real quickly. You can see we're sitting here on runway 6, which doesn't make, well, actually the wind's kind of coming from here, so I guess that makes a little bit of sense. So I'm going to go ahead and dial in my first fix. So I'm going to go here. We are right here. I'm going to go ahead and right-click on it. I'm going to go ahead and say positions, add. We're going to say fix 1. We'll give it a time. Let's see, the current time is 1711. So I'm going to go call this one 1711. Press OK. And now we are ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and climb up to 5,000 feet. I'll go ahead and pre-arm all this, of course. And we're going to be using an initial heading of it's going to work out to be about 315 degrees. We will adjust that heading as we go once we have a better understanding of what the wind is like at altitude and everything along those lines. I'm going to go ahead and take the parking brake off. I'm going to go ahead and take away all these useful helping hints here. Haha. Full power, and off we go on our journey. I'm going to go over to my little stopwatch, and I'm going to engage it right away because we're going to be doing fixes on 10-minute intervals. Folks at home, you don't have to worry, though. I will skip all the boring bits in between and just concentrate on making the fixes as well as how I'm going to be making my corrections. If I tried to do the rest of it, we'd be here for about an hour, and I'm sure you folks have other things to do today. Magic of editing, right? All right, I take off, and I can already feel some significant amount of wind here, which makes this much more exciting than it needs to be. I'm going to go ahead and pop off my landing light here. I don't really need it. I'm also going to go ahead and turn my pitot heat just on the freak chance we pick up a little bit of ice as we're climbing here today, and I'm immediately going to take that turn towards my destination here. I could have done this in a much faster plane, but I actually wanted to do it in the 172 on account of the fact that all the electronics on board aren't going to be, not just distracting, but I'm going to say too helpful, as weird as that sounds. I really look forward to the day that some folks put out, like a DC6 or DC3, where you can really, really benefit from these techniques. But for now, I'm going to enjoy what I got. All right, I'm going to go ahead and flip on the automatic pilot. Come down here. We already got this armed. I'm going to go ahead and flip to heading hold mode. So good news. I've just detected that other station that I was hoping to detect. I'm going to go ahead and get myself my initial little fixes ready to rock here. Go ahead and pop that like that. And again, we're going to make our actual fixes when we get a little closer. So my top frequency right now is being set to Martha's Vineyard, which is going to be all the way down here. In my other frequency, my bottom frequency is actually going to be up here, like I said, kind of near Provincetown. We're going to take our fixes on 10-minute intervals and see how close to our actual track we're going to be. And then we're going to go ahead and calculate our deviation, make our adjustments for our deviation, and then continue our flight. So right now, I'm just going to be kind of cruising up. Apparently, we forgot to put some gas in this thing. I'll go ahead and put a little bit more in here. I don't know why it defaults to half a tank of gas. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And we're going to go ahead and cruise up. So I'm going to take my first fix when we get to 10 minutes in. So I'll see you folks soon. All right, let's start tweaking some knobs. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to accurately play with these two knobs until it's exactly centered as well as in the position that I need it to be in. So I'm going to go kind of fits with this one a little bit. I believe we need to go the other way for that one. All right, remember we're looking for a from. So we got to get these two knobs basically as close to each centered as we possibly can in the time it's going to take us when we cross that particular point in order to get a reliable 2 radial fix here. So that's looking pretty good there. That's looking pretty good right there. And is this better here? And mark. Okay. So that's going to be my fix. So the first thing I see is I can see that this fix here is looks like 50 degrees, and this is going to be from the station that is going to be to our south. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this on real quick. We said around 150 degrees, I believe. 150 degrees. I'm sorry, 50 degrees. So I'm going to go to Martha's Vineyard, right-click. Go ahead and measure this one out. And this is going to be 50 degrees. We're going to say measure distance from. We're going to say this position, and we're going to say 50 degrees. So 50 degrees is going to put it right here. Perfect. All right, so our other position we captured at 10 minutes exactly was, don't touch the knob, is going to be 231 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click right here. I'm going to say measure distance from. I'm going to say 231 degrees. And we're going to do 231. This is probably the worst time ever to go ahead and take this measurement because you can see how awkward it's going to be. And I'm going to click right there. Ha! So that means my initial position is actually going to be very, very, very difficult to calculate. Because under this case, because we don't have enough difference between these two lines, we're theoretically here, even though realistically we're probably a little bit closer to right where those two intersect. So for now, I'm just going to assume that that's our current position. I'm assuming we're doing just fine here. So I'm going to say this is at fix 2. Obviously, we added 10 minutes to that, so it's going to be 21. I'm going to press the OK button, and well, so far we seem to be on course. And again, this was not a reliable fix in the slightest. So unfortunately, this is not going to be good for us. When we take our next 10-minute fix, I'm kind of hoping that it's going to be a little bit more deviation here, so it's an easier time. All right, pop back into the airplane. You can see that it took us about 2.5 minutes to do. All right, so when we get a little closer to a 19.5, we'll go ahead and take our next fix. All right, we're about a minute or so away from our next fix. I'm going to go ahead and change the frequency on our top one to Boston's VOR, which happens to be 112.70. We'll give it a second to kind of get caught up. I'm going to go ahead and tweak this so it says from, and then we're going to start kind of tweaking the knobs until we start getting ourselves a fairly reliable fix here. Let's go ahead and start tweaking this knob as well. We probably passed well beyond that. Actually, we're probably heading towards west. What am I saying? Here we go. Now we're starting to get somewhere. All right, our fix is going to be in 30 seconds. So again, I'm going to tweak these knobs and try to get them as centered as I can. We're using a 2 VOR fix here for this one today. There's different variations, and for our next particular fix, we'll go ahead and use a single VOR. I could be using a running fix as well, but the problem with the running fix is it needs a little more graph paper than I have at this time, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. All right, again, we want to try to get these as close as possible, and the moment we cross that fix time in 8 seconds, we want to stop fiddling with them and leave them as close to the center point as we can possibly get them. I think it's going to be right there. Okay, so from Boston, it looks like we're 337 degrees. So let's go pop up to Boston Logan. I'm going to go ahead and right-click. Measure distance from here, 337 degrees. All right, let's go here. 337, 337. Let me zoom out a little bit more. Whoa. It helps if you actually click the thing. 337 makes no sense at all. That makes absolutely no sense. Because it was set to 2. Oh no! So we have to take the opposite of 337 degrees. So luckily for us, 337 minus 180. Problem avoided. 157 degrees. Cool. So we'll go ahead and right-click here. 157 degrees. 157 degrees. It's so much easier when you just write these things out. 157 degrees. 157, 157, 157, 157 is right there. From our other location, of course, we could see that our heading, don't touch this, was 281 degrees, and that's from this position. So I'm going to right-click here. I'm going to go ahead and measure. And we're looking for 281 degrees. 281, 281, 281. Give me a 281. 281, 281, 281, 281, 281, 281. I feel like I'm a little off here. Let me just confirm that real quickly. 281 degrees, which puts our next fix point here. Aha! This is what happens when your last fix wasn't as reliable as the first fix. So this is going to be at 1731. So what happened? So if I take a look between my initial fix and where my last fix was, you can see I have drifted significantly off course. I have actually drifted a total amount, if I actually measure this, of 5.2 nautical miles from where my original destination is. So that means not only is my current heading incorrect, it also means that I need to come back to where I was originally. Now the good news is I've only drifted a total of 10 miles over the course of how far I've traveled so far. So if I actually measure real quickly from where I came from, let's go ahead and measure that. That was a total of 32 nautical miles, which means 10 out of 30. That's going to be how much I'm adding. Which means my total drift for the entire flight, if I were just extrapolate this, would put me basically right here up where Harvard is, which is unfortunate because I can't afford the tuition. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to figure out a way to get back to where we need to go and then reconfirm that's where we are. Now, one of the problems we're having already is we're on the clock. We only have 8 minutes to make this correction, so how do we do it quickly? So the quickest and easiest way that I always find to do it is to go ahead and figure out where we need to go to get where we need to go from. So if I measure my distance and check this point now, I can see that it is at a 304 magnetic. However, my original correction of 5 degrees got us all the way to this position, which means if I use more than 5 degrees to the right, we're going too far. More than 5 degrees to the left, theoretically, I'm probably going to find something in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and split the difference. So if my current heading, it was 315 degrees, I'm now going to take the 304 degrees, which will get us to where we needed to go, and then I'm going to subtract. Actually, remember, I was doing 6. I'm going to take half, so that would mean 304 plus 3 would be 307 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and order the aircraft to take a turn to 307 degrees. Again, my original wind correction factor was 6 to the right. So to correct for this now, I'm going to assume that it's half of the wind correction factor, and I'm going to bring us back towards the direction we need to go on. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and take this heading for a little while. Now, if I look actually out the window real quickly, I could probably identify exactly where I am. If we actually, this is one of the nice things that we can actually pop up here, and I can see very, very clearly, oh, we're not that far up, that'd be terrible. That, as a matter of fact, that fix was actually fairly accurate. We were pretty much right where I expected us to be. And you can see off there in the distance, again, the visibility today is not great. I'm not going to punch up through the clouds because I don't want things bad to happen. So we'll go ahead and see you at the time for the next fix and see how much correction more we're going to need to use. All right, time for our next fix. So this particular fix, we're just going to go ahead and use a conventional single radial, single distance fix. And I'm going to use Boston as my point here because we're starting to get a little far away from where we were on Cape Cod. So the way this works is very straightforward. I'm simply going to measure my distance as well as my direction. Keep in mind when you do this, we are 1 mile vertical right now, which means any calculation that I make here is going to be slightly shifted on account of the fact that whenever you measure DME, you're measuring slant distance. You're not measuring physical distance. If you want to correct this very, very accurately, of course, we can do a squared, b squared, c squared if you prefer. But for today, I'm going to keep it relatively simple. I just need to know a rough idea of how much more successful my course correction has brought us. So about 20 seconds, I'm just going to keep tweaking this knob here until we get a little bit closer. Obviously, we could file an actual radial for this flight, but that's a VOR tutorial. That's not a using navigational fixes to find where you are tutorial. All right, stand by. Look at the number. 3, 2, 1, 0. Stop. So I'm 15 nautical miles away on a heading of 190. So we'll go pop over here. Right click real quick from where we were. Measure distance from here. We said that was 15 nautical miles away. And we also said that the heading was, I believe, I don't get this one wrong, we have 190. So 190 puts us right here. 15 nautical miles. Let's back this up a little bit. 190, 15. This is so much easier with paper, which puts our next fix right here. So go ahead and say add user point. We'll say this is a fix number 4, and this is at 1741. Press OK. And you can see now, because of our course correction, we've actually started to drift back towards where we were going from before. As a matter of fact, if you actually look very closely, you'll see that we're almost perfectly back on course with a teeny tiny little correction. It seems like our original wind correction angle was just simply too strong. 6 degrees was too much. We needed to use 3 the whole time. So now we're gradually going to bring ourselves back. If we actually extrapolate on this course just a teeny tiny bit here, let's go ahead and grab this real quickly. I'll get this out of the way just for a moment. If we actually extrapolate on this course, you can see it's going to bring us slightly to the north of where we need to be. We actually need to hit this point here. The good news for us, though, is this is actually an ILS. So because it's an ILS, it means we can actually start to plan for our ILS approach. It looks like the frequency is going to be 110.90. So I'm actually going to start getting that ready. So I'm going to go bring up here. I'll bring 110.90. 90. Looks good. Swap that over. If we're lucky, we'll actually get the information right away, but we can see we're actually too far away from that particular ILS approach to actually receive any information. We do know we need to get at 2,700 feet for the landing, though. We can start getting that ready pretty much right away. So let's take a look real quickly here. Now it looks like our runway heading, I'm just going to confirm this visually real fast. It's going to be runway 29er, so we're going to go ahead and dial that in over here as well. I'll flip this over here real quick. I'll go get ourselves over to runway 29er. That's going to be west. That's going to be runway 29er right there. And again, we're going to proceed on our heading that we were a minute ago. But we expect, and this is huge, we expect to hit it more like this, so almost at a slight angle. So what we really should do after we've taken that last fix, let's go ahead and move it over here, is we should swing slightly to the left, I'd say about 3 more degrees. 1, 2, 3 more degrees to the left. I'm also going to start descending now, so I can start getting myself all nice and lined up for a nice old safe landing here. Hopefully this needle comes alive long before we get to that point, and long before we have to take our next fix, which of course would be at 40 minutes total. So let's go ahead and get that all set up. Let's start thinking about descending. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down just a teeny tiny bit. This one does not work well. I'm actually kind of disappointed. Usually you can pull the thing out and set the actual vertical speed, but it's just like, come on. I'm going to go ahead and kill the automatic pilot. I'll go ahead and give myself a nice little descent of about 500 feet per minute. I don't want to overdo it here. That looks good to me. Boop, just like that. And now we're going to hold this angle of attack here. We're going to pick up quite a bit of speed on this descent, though, so I'm actually going to back my throttle up to try to keep my true airspeed roughly what I want it to be. Again, I don't want to do too much excessive here. All right, I'll see you when we get to our next fix. All right, it's about time for our next fix. We're sitting here high and dry at about 39 minutes into our flight here. I've had to go ahead and swap my 2 radios. We're going to go ahead and take ourselves another fix out of Boston here. Again, it's about 17 nautical miles away. I'm a little nervous that we're a bit more north to our position than I really want us to be. I have on the bottom side, of course, I dialed in our little ILS, and I'm ready to swap it and bring it over to 290 once it comes time to go ahead and do our next fix here. So I'm going to go. We've also gone down to 2,700 feet, which is going to be the altitude we need for our ILS approach here. So it shouldn't be too difficult for us. So again, just a moment, we're going to go ahead and take our next fix. It's actually amazing how much fuel we burned so far. That's actually been a pretty good use of this aircraft so far. So keep in mind, in the real world, normally, as soon as you detect yourself off course, you'd make an effort to get back to your original course rather than kind of compensate for where you are. That just means a lot more navigation on your part, because then you have to recalculate from your new position. So kind of watch out for that when you're doing this. And again, this is much easier. We don't have to worry about flying the plane. And fix 18 nautical miles at 258 at 18 nautical miles. 258, 18 nautical miles. 258 at 18 nautical miles. Grab this one. 258. Let's see, 258 is going to be right here at 18 nautical miles. Yeah, it looks like we're still pretty far into the north, so our calculated winds were definitely not what we expected them to be, which is pretty typical. That puts our next fix right there. So go ahead and right-click there. We'll go ahead and say user points. I'll add a user point there. This is going to be our next fix. So this is 51 minutes in now. Boop, just like that. And we're going to make this temporary because we don't need it. Okay, so this particular fix is putting us in a bad spot because at any point we need to turn onto our final approach here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and recalculate. If we were to take an immediate turn from that given position, whoops, I didn't mean a range ring. I meant to do this. We would need to go ahead and bring ourselves around on a course to about 294. So let's go ahead and do that one now and take into account a little tiny bit of wind again coming from the right. So we'll bring this thing around to about 294. And we're hoping at any point we go ahead and acquire that ILS, which unfortunately at this point we have not yet acquired, which is, it happens. We can always take another fix. So come swing this way. I'm already noticing out my window, I can see the airport that we need to be traveling towards. This is a good time, of course, to practice our how to compensate for drift by looking out the window techniques. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my head out the window, I'm going to look at the destination, and I notice I'm going this way. So to compensate for that, I'm actually going to tilt a couple degrees this way, wait for the aircraft to kind of catch up, and then I'm going to zoom in as far as I can and look out the window again. Do I see the aircraft still drifting to the left, or do I see this staying in the same place on the horizon? Now, when you do this technique, of course, you have to kind of be mindful because slowly over time that could drift fairly aggressively, so kind of keep an eye on it. So let's see here. It looks like we're still staying relatively constant, so I think we're in actually pretty darn good shape right now. Let's go pop over to a 112.70, which is going to flip over to 109.90. Nope, we are still not detecting that particular ILS, which is okay, because again, if this were our pure instrumental conditions, we wouldn't be there anyway, because our time would not support that. And yes, I noticed when I did my fix, I put the wrong time on it, but that's okay for now. All right, we'll see you in a few minutes. All right, we have acquired the ILS signal, and we can see we're slightly off course. So at this point, it's just a matter of kind of landing the plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring the plane a little bit over here to the right. Based on the ILS, it says our final destination as far as where we've actually ended up is slightly to the left of where we expected. So when we did make that correction to the left, trying to get back onto our original course with the 2904, it was a little bit too much of a correction. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip on my automatic pilot here, which we already have. We're going to flip the approach arm. And any second, of course, it should grab onto the approach and start bringing us down here to a nice, safe, soft landing. So hopefully this video has been fairly helpful as far as helping you understand that concept. The big thing is when you are making course corrections, the safest thing to do is usually to correct back to your original course versus trying to correct from where your new spot is. Again, if you can go back and you can catch it soon enough, that works. Generally, when it comes to fixes, our 10-minute fixes were very problematic because by the time we were able to identify our mistake because of our two fixing techniques being too close together, we were already significantly off course, almost 6 nautical miles too far to the north, which took us a very, very long time to go ahead and, of course, correct for as far as that goes. So that's something you want to kind of keep in mind. Now, if you're using a very, very large aircraft, like, an airliner, and you're using techniques like this, obviously you have to be very thoughtful about how often you take your fixes because you're going to be covering hundreds of miles in a very, very, very short period of time, which could certainly have a big impact on as far as your final performance goes. So I'm going to go ahead and get ourselves all to landing, and we'll take a look at how we did. Oh man, this visibility is so bad. It's like making my screen dark. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give it just a little more throttle. We're getting up pretty darn close to the ground here. I'll go ahead and take off the automatic pilot. Give it a little bit of left foot. I always find that the autopilot, for whatever reason in Microsoft, always tends to come a little low when it comes to approaches. I think it just needs to bring itself a little bit more confidence, and that's what would bring it to it. So what we'll do after we set this thing down on the ground is I'll go ahead and take a look at a little nav map to see just how close our original plan was to what we actually ended up with. As far as timing goes, our original ETA was going to put us right here at about 53 minutes. I think our final ETA, if I can actually make it out, is working out to be about 53 minutes. So even though we did end up a little bit off course, it actually ended up working out pretty well. We got a bit of a crosswind here. So let's go ahead and compensate for that. I'm going to use a little bit of wing low method here. A little bit of right foot. There we go. Woo! Feel that. Man, that is gusty. Nothing too nasty, though. We're going to try not to hit that little building at the end of the runway there. Okay, we're going to use the rudder to keep us lined up. We're going to use the aileron to keep us left and right. Cut the throttle. We're going to come a couple feet off the ground. Go ahead and gently put that wheel down first. We're going to go ahead and roll it onto the right wheel, and we're going to go ahead and grab that front wheel as well. Nice. Now that's what I call a nice landing for a crosswind. Ooh, let's go ahead and slow this thing down to a full stop. Ooh, that's the sound it should make. Now let's go pop over to the little nav map and see how we did. Okay, so right now, take a look at little nav map. This little gray line was our theoretical path here. You can see all my markings here as far as coming up with how we got to where we got. I'm going to go ahead and erase all my nasty lines here and just get rid of them real fast. Make your life a little bit easier to see what we've done here. Delete that one, delete that one. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one up here. You can see all my fixes as well as my original intended path here. You can see we got off course really quickly, and then we gradually started coming back to where we were just a few moments ago. We actually want to look at it as a red trail. You can see immediately after takeoff, I had way overcompensated for the wind, got us all the way to here, and then started slowly bringing ourselves back towards where we needed to go as we started correcting more and more aggressively after we took that one fix. It's worth noting that the one fix that we took here, our initial fix, was way off. It's also worth noting the fix we took off of the Boston DME here was also significantly off on account of the fact that we were using a combination of distance without using a second point. This one was much, much, much more accurate because we had decreased in altitude. The higher altitude, the more difficult it is going to be to actually get a fix off a single DMA as well as a radial. But in general, like this fix especially, right, especially, was significantly accurate, as was this fix right here. And you can see at the end of the day, we were still able to find where that little ILS was. I picked it up basically moments after I crossed my fix 5 here and was able to put the thing down safely at the ground about 1 minute later than we had expected. So hopefully this video has been helpful as kind of showing you what this would look like over a process. Obviously, whenever you're doing your wins, make sure you get better win reliability than I got. Of course, this could just be because the simulator wins and the real world wins didn't agree, but sometimes that happens as well. Enjoy.